Hello, witchy family. I hope that all of you are doing well, and I appreciate your patience with me as I took a little bit of time to gather my thoughts and actually have something a little more coherent to say. I actually made a slide presentation for this. So I am going to go ahead and share the screen so that you can see the slides, and it'll help keep me on track and make sure that for the most part, I'm saying what it is that I want to say because I need a script sometimes to be able to do that. So let me just get that set up. And there we go. Okay. So I'm not sure where I show up in the recording for you. I don't know what you can see, but I'm going to put my screen up in the corner so you can still see my face. This was the Q&A topic for our first Sunday of the month meeting, which is our question and answer time. And I had wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about boundaries and expectations in the student-teacher relationship. So you get access, but how much access is reasonable access? That type of thing. Because I've had this question come up a couple of times, and as many words as I lay down in an effort to explain my thoughts and to get everybody on the same page. Sometimes that's not the easiest way for other people to access information, and I get that. So we're gonna kind of talk through it and see. Of course, there's no question and answer right now because it's just me here in the Zoom recording, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to sort of clarify things and make it all understandable and accessible and all that kind of jazz. So this applies to when I say student teacher, the teachers are me, Laurelei, and also other RTA mentors. There is the potential in the future for more than just me doing this. So there is one member of the home coven Care She, who is in a place where they are at the right level to be able to do mentorship. It's just sort of a matter of whether or not that's something they want to do. And then as students from the RTA take their third degree, there's the potential, if they want, to be able to join in with assisting in this way and reaching out and acting as that mentor for students that are working on first and second year studies, that they would be able to do that, and really even third year studies, because once you're a third degree, you've got all that under your belt too. So these boundaries and expectations apply to any magister of the lineage who takes up the role of RTA mentor. Magister of the lineage is somebody who is initiated by me or by somebody in my line. So there we go. So, in another year and a half, we may have others coming on board, to assist with this. So as we're talking about these boundaries and expectations, I feel like there are several different areas for us to consider. One of them is the sharing of assignments kind of versus mentoring. Those are two different relationships, and I want to give some clarity to that. Speed of response time for inquiries and for feedback. How quickly can you expect somebody to answer your question? When is a reasonable time to start poking them or to feel sort of irritated that they haven't gotten back to you? The depth of the feedback that you receive. And again, that's going to kind of vary from whether or not you're just sharing assignments or if you're going through the mentoring process. Sharing personal information or sharing a personal connection. I feel like when we're talking about boundaries and expectations, that this is something that we need to discuss. And then I kind of said, are there others? And I would like for you, if there are other areas, to pop them into the comments on the Thread app under the video. And not so much you can pop things into the YouTube, but it's easier if we keep it into the thread app, because then new people coming in will be able to see that and they don't have to go to like multiple places to be able to participate in that conversation. Okay, so let's jump right into sharing assignments versus mentoring. So each course is designed to be self-paced and self-guided, meaning that 99% of the students who go through the Red Thread Academy are not reaching out to me at all. They are not like, maybe they reach out to just have me give them access to parts of the app, like being able, like the RTA one gives you the RTA basics, the RTA videos, the RTA photos, that kind of stuff. But sometimes that's all that I hear from a person. Or maybe they'll ask me a single question, what does this mean? Or what did you intend for us for this? That kind of thing. But for the most part, it's self-paced and self-guided, because we really highly value autonomy um, and personal authority. So you know as well as I do if you're getting the content or not getting the content, like if it's making sense to you or if it's not making sense to you. So really, it's only students who are seeking in-person initiation at the third degree, because it's not, unless you're working in my home coven here locally, in-person initiation isn't an option for first and second. It would be exorbitantly expensive, I think, to try to offer that for all three degrees. So third degree is the one where if you're going through the Red Thread Academy and you want, you're a distant student and you want to be initiated by me, I need to see your work. And I'm making the note here, this is kind of the, like, because this video will still be live on the site, in a couple of years, you only need to share that work with the person who's going to be doing the initiation. So right now that's me. But in the future, it could be a different mentor, or it could be your coven leader. So a third degree initiate can adopt for themselves the title of queen, devil, or consort. And a queen, devil, or consort, which are three terms that all apply to the third degree. It's sort of like your personal preference, which one you would like to be called, can start their own coven, basically. And if you're working in a local coven, I don't need to see all the work. Your coven leader needs to see the work. Your coven leader will be a third degree initiate at that point, whether they're self-initiated or whether they're initiated by me. They will be in a position to do that and review that. So that's the person who needs to see your work at that point, right? Okay, so mentoring is a formal relationship. It is like a mentor and a mentee. You're going to set a monthly meeting schedule. There's going to be, a very clear idea of what's being covered there. It may be RTA stuff, and it could be other stuff included in that. But if it's specifically just the RTA stuff, there's going to be an understanding of, like, these are the assignments we're trying to handle in this month. There's going to be an understanding of, is this work supposed to be done before you come into that mentoring time and then we review it together, or are we kind of doing it the other way around where we discuss the concepts and then you go off and do the assignment and send them later? But at either rate, there's kind of that like monthly review of work and monthly discussion of that work that's happening. It is, again, a formal relationship, and it's one in which the mentor is compensated for that time. And we'll talk about that here in a bit as well. So the less formal version then is sharing of assignments, and that can happen outside of mentoring as a more informal relationship. That is already happening with me for students that began the course before December 31st of this year, which is 2022. So if you started the course and you started sending me your assignments, and I'm giving you the kind of informal feedback, that's that sharing of assignments, and that's going to continue. So I want to I want to just make it really clear that if you've already started doing that, nothing that I'm about to say is going to change that, but it is going to be different for people coming in after this point, just because we're growing, and the time that it takes for me to review those assignments, even in a less formal way and giving less feedback, is still quite time consuming. So for people coming in, if you've started after January 1st of 2023, then that feedback can happen with peers, which includes me, but with peers through the Thread app. So you can post your assignments. There's a little process, like the way the app construction is, like you submit it through the show and tell button, and then I get a notification and I have to go in and approve it. And I can only do that from my computer. Sorry, I'm being slightly mauled by a rabbit. Let me get my blanket up off the floor so she'll stop nibbling on the edges. So I can't approve those from my mobile device. I have to go into a desktop type device or a laptop to be able to approve those messages, but that usually happens within 24 hours. I try to do it as soon as possible after I get the notification, but some of that has to do with like where I am when I get the notification. But at any rate, you can share there, and then it posts into the RTA Basics, like on the main page of RTA Basics is kind of where we do sharing of student work, just like random thoughts and announcements, that kind of thing can all go there. And then other people in the course can comment on, give you feedback on. I almost always do. I almost always say something to be able to, like give you the thumbs up, like, or if I have questions, I might be like, explain this to me. This looks cool, but I don't get what's happening. That kind of thing. So that'll be more of that sharing of assignments just on a sort of a day-to-day level, like an as-you-go place. So let's talk about this in a little bit more detail, and I might have already said some of the things that are going to be on this slide. I don't remember. Yeah, okay. So starting in January of 2023, which is when the year 3 mastery course is going to get released, there'll be a clear distinction between that informal sharing process and the more formal mentoring process. This is more on my end. If you're already here before January of 2023, then whatever arrangement we have set up, whatever relationship we have going, it's going to stay the same, okay? You can get more formal if you like, but if we're already engaging in, like, you send me 3 or 4 assignments once a month, and then I respond to them as I have time within the month after that, we'll keep doing that. Any student, yeah. So any student who purchased year 1 or 2 course guides before, I didn't notice the typo, so sorry. Whoops. I'm clicking things and making stuff show up. Fantastic. Any student who purchased before December 31st, 2022, not 2011. will be able to continue sharing assignments with me directly for basic feedback, just like we've been doing. All other students are going to be encouraged to share with the group or to pursue formal mentoring. So like those are the 2 choices, right? You can share with the group. You're still going to get feedback from me. You're still going to, know, if you're on the right track and all that kind of stuff. But this clarity and this differentiation is happening when around the same time that the year 3 mastery course guide's coming out, because I'm also dropping the prices on everything. So it's going to be basically buying a book and getting the access to the online group, but not necessarily this like major access to me, for that $75, $80 price. Um, okay, I think I've covered, yeah. And all of the course guides are going to drop in price at that time. So it'll make it a lot more accessible for folks who basically are like, I can't handle the, you know, that level of investment, and I don't necessarily need um, that level of interaction. And it'll also make it easier for me because the more people that are joining, um, if I'm trying to engage in that basic feedback with all of them, I don't have time for anything else. And you guys want other content from me, and I want other content from me. Okay, so then the mentoring relationship, what does that actually look like? If you're interested in doing that, what does that look like? So it's a one-on-one private teaching and coaching model. We would meet on Zoom, we'd have a set time and probably a set day every month, or we would set that next appointment. Like if we're meeting today, we would set our next month's meeting date and time right then so that we've both got it on our calendars. But we could have it be something, as like standard and repeatable as on the first Thursday of every month, at 7 p.m. Eastern, that's when we meet. And that could be your time, and you just know that like we're going to be there for that. It can be short or long term. So it could be just one session if that's what you wanted, or like one session here and then one session over there a few months later, just to be able to sort of like hit areas that you're struggling with, or to get some feedback on like a particular group of assignments that you're like, I know I got these, but these over here, I would like some input on. We could do that. Or it could be ongoing. It could be every single month. It is a paid service that balances the energy exchange in a distance teaching relationship. So, and what I mean by that is that when you're in a coven, when you're working closely with people that you see every week, every other week, whatever kind of schedule you have set up, maybe you meet on Zoom once a month and then you meet in person once a month to do ritual together. There's a really close bond that happens there, and energy sort of travels back and forth along those lines. So the person leading that situation, or the person that's sort of taking on the teacher role in that situation, is also being supported by the people that are viewed as being the students in that relationship, in the sense that, if the teacher gets sick, their friends in the coven are checking on them, maybe bringing them soup, offering to like babysit the kid, while you have like your awful day of, down in the dumps illness, that kind of stuff. That's just one example, really, but those kinds of bonds exist, and that kind of energy support. Sorry, the headset clicks off every now and then if there's no input coming in. The bond exists and the energy flows both ways that way. In a distance teaching relationship, whether it's me as the teacher or somebody else as the teacher, that's not there as much. Like there's not the ability to do that in quite the same way. Not to say that you don't get close with people, because you do, but like they're not necessarily your distance students. End up not necessarily being like I'm going to call you and vent because I've had a terrible day and I need a sounding board. Like, I think any one of you would be pretty weirded out if I did that. If I had just like started texting you going, these people that I work with, like that's not the relationship that we have. Which means that it can be quite tiring and depleting on the teacher in that sort of distance relationship, if they're not getting something back because of sort of natural supports and natural bond. Um, it sounds funny to say, and I feel awkward even saying it. Although I'm going to be doing a YouTube video soon about the idea of the relationship between money and witchcraft and where people feel about that. But money is a form of energy. It is as one of my associates calls it, they're like survival tickets, right? You put in work and you got money, and then you can use that money to get the things that you need to survive. So we're not bartering in the sense that like you're not bringing me chickens once a month, a chicken, so that I have something to eat for the day that we work together. Um, the money helps to do that. It helps to compensate a person for their time. And this is something that I'm talking about actually in the year 3 book, as we talk about coven leadership and teaching and all of that kind of stuff. But there are basically 2 philosophies that we have within the Spiral Castle tradition, which the Red Thread Academy is the teaching branch of that. And one of them is that the family relationship, like the immediate family relationship, is not, how did I phrase it? Something like it's not a commodity, basically. That bond, that closeness, like I don't there's no money exchange between the members of my home coven and myself, that is not a commodity that we're looking for compensation on. And on the other side of the same coin, like it's still part of the same whole, we do sort of hold a value that people should be compensated for their time, and their energy. If somebody's spending that time and that energy on you, or you on them, they on you, that there should be reciprocity going back and forth. So if that reciprocity isn't happening in a natural, free-flowing sort of way, then, gifting or paying for services is a natural solution to that. I feel like I spent too much time on that, so I apologize. I have a level of awkwardness about that concept, so, or at least in voicing that concept. So thank you for your compassion and humanity as I try to get that out. Okay, so the formal mentoring relationship includes a monthly 60-minute long video chat with an in-depth review and scoring of assignments, and then also the ability to discuss other areas of concern, difficulty, or personal insight. So things that you might, sorry, got my heated blanket, things that you might be encountering in those assignments, or other aspects of your witchcraft that maybe aren't being addressed by the assignments that you're on and that you would still like to talk with somebody about. Right now, because I am the only mentor in the RTA, it's only available through me, and the way that we set that up is at this Patreon link. So I've got 2 Patreons. One is Blade and Broom specifically, and then the other one is Laurelei Black, and that's a little bit more open-ended, and it's kind of a new one, but it allows folks to be able to sort of set up those coaching sessions. And it's just it comes up then as a recurring payment if you want to do an ongoing relationship, or you could just like sign up for the 1 month, make sure that that gets paid, and then sign out of it again. As other magisters make themselves available, we will post announcements here on the Red Thread Academy portions of the Thread app. And you can always contact me for a list of available magisters who might be ready to take on that mentoring relationship. So you can always contact me if you have no other way, if you don't know my email address, which I didn't write anywhere, but it's Laurelei@asteriabooks.com. You can always email me that way, or you can use the chat feature of the Thread app to get in touch with me. I also want to make the note that mentoring is not required for those in-person initiations. I require that I see your work. I don't require that you engage in a monthly paid relationship with me to be able to see that work. Okay, so there are other options for me to see your work. And here's where we're going to talk about that. So this is the idea of assignment sharing for in-person initiation. So once again, I'm going to reiterate, the person performing your in-person initiation, whether that's me or another official RTA mentor or your coven leader, needs to see all of your work before they can agree to perform the initiation. Not just before they perform it, they shouldn't be agreeing to perform the initiation until all the work is done. Okay. So I'm going to draw a hard line there and make sure that we all understand you're not asking for initiation until you've done all of the assignments in that course guide. At that point, then your coven leader, other initiates at that level review your request and make sure that everything's in place and that they're ready to proceed. And then you would set the date for when that initiation would be. So it might not be happening in a year and a day. If that was your expectation, if you got finished at a year and a day and then made the request, it might be a month later. It might be 2 months later, depending on what people's schedules are like. If you are a new distance student, meaning starting January of 2023, if you signed up starting then, one of your options is that you can share all of your lessons at once at the end of the course. So like maybe you share sporadically here and there on the Thread app, you know, with your peers, like to be able to sort of not really publicly share, but like with that group of people on the app, maybe you share here and there. But you can like save everything and I can walk you through the process of how I'd like to see this, you know, on a Google Drive or as a compressed PDF or something. And I have instructions for how to do those things. But you could share lessons 1 through, you know, I should say 0101 through 1202 or 1203, depending on the year, all at one time. Or you can sign up for the personal mentoring. So some of this will depend on how much involvement you want as you go, and some of it will depend on, you know, financial considerations and that kind of thing. I'm wanting to make sure that there are plenty of ways for you to get the support without having to pay anything, right? Again, like I don't see this as a commodity necessarily. I'm not trying to commodify our craft. Just be compensated for time is the main thing. If you are a 2020 through 2022 distance student, meaning those are the years that you first signed up and first started sending me assignments and communicating with me, you can do either one of those things above. Those are both options to you. Or you can share your assignments monthly, like many of you have been doing, for general feedback, which I'm going to get to in just a moment, what that general feedback looks like. So if you are in this group of you signed up for and started your Red Thread Academy assignment sometime before December of 2022, then you still have the option to send me your lessons all at once at the end of a course or at the end of all 3 courses if you like. You didn't think that you wanted that and now you do. You can send them to me when you're ready to send them to me, just like as a course bundle for each year. Or you can sign up for the mentoring if you want to do that, if you feel like that would be a thing that would be of value to you. Or you can send me lessons in groups of 3 or 4 assignments at a time, as often as once a month, and then I'll be able to respond to those And we'll talk about what that general feedback looks like. It's not as specific as the mentoring feedback. It's not as in depth, but it's still there and available and I think useful. This last little note is for any in-person student, whether you're studying with me or you're studying with somebody else. You can and should be sharing your assignments with your coven leader. Now, that coven leader, again, I'm going to remind you, is a third degree initiate. They're a queen, a devil, or a consort. Like they've gone through their third degree initiation already. If they're not in that place yet, if you're in a study group, and I know some of you are, um, usually what happens in a study group setting is that like everybody's kind of sharing what they're working on and it's, highly egalitarian. There's not really anybody that's set up like is an official leader. Um, if you anticipate that there is a person that's sort of heading things up that maybe is a little further along in their studies and that will be taking on that role more than likely of coven leader once they've had that initiation, then if it is agreeable and you're comfortable with it at that study group place, you can share your work with them too. Like I recommend it. That's what I would do if I were in that position. That's what I did when I was in that position because I too ran a study group prior to my third degree initiation. And then most of the people that were participating in that became um, initiates themselves, but that wasn't something that was really available until after I was a third degree. So just kind of follow the guidelines and the norms in that study group or in that coven. Okay, so the next area of consideration is speed of response time. And this is not just about assignments, this is about like general inquiries and that kind of thing as well. So I have this little note here that in this age of social media, real-time chats and texts, we all have different expectations regarding how quickly is appropriate to respond to messages and receive feedback on assignments. And I'm going to let you know that I didn't used to be this way necessarily, but for my mental health, I have become a little bit of a troglodyte. Just a little bit. I still use lots of technology, like lots of technology, and I still use social media. I still engage, but I have turned off every notification on my phone except for people that are in my like immediate friends and family who are on my favorites list. Their calls get put right through. Everybody else, my phone is screening it because I have do not disturb set. And I have checks and safeguards in place to make sure that that dang thing is not dinging at me every couple of minutes or like in a fast moving conversation on Messenger that it's not like ding, da ding, 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 as the four other people in the chat are responding. That was something I did for myself a couple years ago, and it has made a big difference in terms of like my calmness and sanity levels because it was very, very, very triggering for my anxiety. So that's me. You may be in a position where you feel like I saw that you read the message. I need a response right now. And you're used to that, maybe within your social groups or within your work groups. That's the norm there. I don't want that to be the norm here. I want there to be some ease and some grace to a certain extent to allow people to like finish their dinner, continue watching that movie with their child, continue the hike that they're on before they respond. All of these kinds of things, or like possibly even finish the family visit that they have and not respond until they have returned, back to their normal workspace if they're out on vacation or they're out doing an unusual thing for themselves. So I have this note here that the magisters of this tradition are not bots. We are not programmed with responses and with being able to just like fling back those answers as soon as they land in our inbox. We are human people Most of us have jobs, most of us have families, and most of us have other commitments outside of the Red Thread Academy and the Spiral Castle tradition. And that's normal and good. Like, you may be like me, where like witchcraft is your primary special interest. um, and you're mostly ready to talk about it at the drop of a hat, but you still have a job that you've got to do through the week, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and answering questions about witchcraft isn't something that you can necessarily like dedicate the spoons to do while you're trying to juggle your other responsibilities. So compassion and respect are really the key words in our teacher-student relationship. We expect both compassion and respect on both sides of the coin. Teachers should be giving them, students should be giving them. We are assuming a place of humanity and mutual respect. I would say that a typical response time for a group of assignments should be about 1 month. I know that can feel long, and I know that as I was going through my move and that kind of stuff, some of you waited longer than that for me, for which I apologize. Um, Moving forward, my typical response time on assignments is going to be 1 month. And if you haven't heard from me in a month, poke me. It may have gone to my spam folder. Email's weird about that. Like, don't necessarily just assume that I got it. So, if it's coming on 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, and you're like, she never responded to me, let me know that it was there. Let me know through the app because um, it's a little more consistent. And the same thing goes for other magisters who are taking on that mentoring role. Give them about a month for sharing of assignments. Um, that kind of includes, right, even if you are in the mentoring, a formal mentoring relationship, if you're meeting once a month, say you send assignments over to be reviewed immediately following that chat, it's going to be next month during the chat when you're hearing the feedback on them. So it's the same whether that's formal or informal, I guess. And then typical response time for queries, I would say 1 to 2 business days, like not 1 to 2 actual calendar days. Don't write to me or somebody else on a Friday afternoon and think, well, it's Sunday and they haven't written back to me. No, give them Monday, Tuesday, to be able to do that because um, I just think it's a more reasonable time frame. They may be faster than that. I may be faster than that, right? Like sometimes I'm already in that mode and ready to answer. But if they're sort of out of the loop, this gives them time to have a reasonable response time. So then the question is about depth of feedback. How much feedback are you getting? So it's going to depend on the relationship, the nature of the relationship between the student and the teacher. If it's an informal distance relationship, that's going to look different than if it's a okay, that's going to look different than if it's a formal distance relationship. And that's going to look different than if it is a more formal in-person relationship. And I would say that the in-person relationships, between a coven leader or a study group leader and the students that have come to that group is going to like that's the sort of the roundest, most complete kind of relationship that we have, and one where there's peer bonding in addition to that teacher-student bonding that happens because our spaces tend to be more egalitarian. The teacher's the teacher because they know stuff and they've been doing stuff. They have the experience with it, but not because they are somehow a better witch. than anybody else in the group. That ain't how we see it. So a coven leader and student relationship typically provides verbal feedback and track scores on an assignment tracker. That feedback can be quite in depth. It might not be that in depth. Like maybe your work doesn't require that much input that time. It's just like, hey, that's pretty cool. I really like that. You hit all the points. Good job. And they move on. A lot of times that feedback happens in a group setting because like everybody's sharing their assignment, everybody's sharing their work on that topic together that day. That's what we're doing is, let's see what you came up with. Let's see what you did. Let's see what your thoughts are on it. So um, there's like the opportunity to go into much more depth of just discussion and sort of getting finer ideas. Um, but the Coven leader is also going to be tracking those scores on an assignment tracker. The assignment tracker, when I'm talking about that, is the student progress checklist that is in the beginning of every course manual. So I actually recommend just using the one in your book, like handwriting the ones, like handwriting your dates in the book, or if you've got the PDF version only, printing out that page um, and tracking it that way. Because you too can track your assignments and you should you should track when you did them. You should track the score that you got on them so that you have a visual way of knowing where you are in the process. If it is me with a 2020 through 2022 distance student, that feedback is going to look like 1 or 2 sentences per assignment, a score, and then I also put it in the tracker. So I have a tracker, I have a folder for each person that I'm working with directly. And in that folder, if you're on year 2, I have like a year 1 and a year 2 folder for you so I can keep the assignments separate, keep the trackers separate. But I keep track of that. If you put your date of like when you actually did the assignment, like a couple of you do, some of you do that, you date your assignment on the top. I put that date as the actual date of completion because it's when you completed it. That's what I put in the tracker. If you don't put that date, I put when I got it, the email with that information. And then if it's me, or really here, like it shouldn't just say Laurelei for this Laurelei/2023 plus. But this is just me right now, other mentors in the future. If you're sharing your assignments all at once as a distance student, you're going to share that with me. I'm going to put the scores on a tracker, and then are going to do a pre-initiation Zoom meeting in which we verbally discuss the work. And if there is anything that needs to be redone or reconsidered, there'd be some short written feedback on that to give you the opportunity to do that before that final check-in. If it's another RTA mentor and a distance mentee, or me, right? If you're a distance mentee, if you have signed up for formal mentorship, whether that's with me or with somebody else, you're going to get in-depth verbal feedback in those Zoom meetings or whatever video chat method you and your mentor are using. I like Zoom because you can share screens and that kind of stuff. But if you want to use something else, you can. But you're going to get that in-depth verbal feedback once a month, and the teacher's still going to be tracking, like notating. They're going to have some kind of record of what they've seen, what they've discussed with you. All right. So I'm going to pause right here and say some of this, and I've spent a lot of time going over it. Some of it is already what you've experienced. Some of you, those of you that are engaging with me, like this is not new information. This is how it's been. There have been a couple of people who honestly are never going to see this video because they ended up deciding that the Red Thread Academy wasn't for them. That like expected me to respond within minutes or hours of seeing their messages. And they would expect that of another RTA mentor too, um, that they that there was a lot of emotional labor, which is where we're getting to with this personal information and personal connection, that there was a lot of sort of like not just establishing an emotional reciprocity, a rapport, but like demanding right off the bat of all of this additional labor and emotional labor. Um, so I feel like establishing the boundaries is a healthy thing for us as a whole community to do because it's not just about me and what I can handle. It's also about what should be expected and what should not be expected of other people that are doing the teaching and the feedback and the facilitating and all that kind of stuff. So, personal information, personal connection is the next thing, and really one of the last things that we're going to talk about. So, an RTA student and their mentor, whether it's distance or coven, might very well develop a close bond. We are family, after all, right? Like, there's a reason that we use these words for it. We are family. So, even at a distance, and certainly within a coven, there is the possibility to really develop quite a close bond. There are some of you that I have been engaging with for a while now as a distance student that I feel pretty close to. I consider you a friend. Um, Not necessarily like we don't have the relationship where I'm calling you up and venting about my day or being like, oh, you're not going to believe what my husband did, or like, oh, let me share this big thing personally with you that just happened. Partially because I don't feel I feel like that would be an invasion of your space, right? Um, if we were an in-person coven that was meeting, or even like a Zoom-based coven that was meeting, that relationship might very well be different. It is different for the people that are in my coven. Like I do call them, they are my sounding board. I am their sounding board. We are, a big part of each other's support networks. And absolutely have the family feels for them. So you might develop a close bond, or they might not. And again, we are family after all. Like, not everybody is close with everybody in their family. Um, Family relationships are complicated, you know? And the relationship, like, even if you are close, the relationship that you have with your cousin is different than the one that you have possibly with an aunt or with your grandfather. Like, those are there's a different dynamic that's happening there. And our experiences are part of what inform how we relate in those ways. And we're all coming to this from different places of experience. So there's nothing wrong with you. Or, oh, hold on. There's nothing wrong with you or with anybody else in the coven situation or in the student teacher relationship if you don't feel particularly close. If this is just, if you see this person as almost like a supervisor of like, nope, they're letting me know if I'm on the right track, they're letting me know what I need to do. But we don't need to hear from each other aside from coven stuff. And that's a relationship that you both feel comfortable with, then it's fine by me. I think everybody should get out of this what they need out of it. Regardless of what that relationship is, respect for each other's privacy and boundaries is expected no matter what. Just no matter what. It doesn't matter how close you are, you don't get to violate somebody's privacy or boundaries, is part of it. We absolutely never name other members of the Red Thread Academy or of the Spiral Castle tradition. So we might, for instance, there are a few of us here that have YouTube channels. We might have a shout out to somebody else for having provided a concept or a spark of an idea. We might like tag their channel and be like, hey, thanks so much for this, but we don't go, my RTA sister so-and-so, or my RTA sibling so-and-so. It's nobody else's business who's here and who's not. That's a personal relationship with their witchcraft. You don't get to name it for them, not without their consent. Now, if they give their consent, if you say, hey, I'm gonna, I'd like to mention you, you gave me this fantastic idea, I'd like to mention you. Um, can I do that? They say yes. And if you all want to follow up with, can I mention that we're both in the RTA, in the Red Thread Academy together, and that's where this conversation came up from, and they also say yes, then you could do that. But not without that explicit consent. And do not assume that consent in this instance is consent in the next instance too. Like, just be as specific with each other as possible. No sharing of photos, other people's experiences, or anything along those lines. Like, I don't get to tell your story on my YouTube channel because I read it in an assignment or because you shared it in Coven. It's not my story to tell. If I feel strongly moved that an example like yours would be so fitting, I need to come to you, or you need to go to somebody else. If you're in that position, you need to go to that person and specifically say, hey, I'd really like to share this experience. What are the boundaries that I can do that under? If I say that it's, someone I know or just a friend of mine, like if I keep it all anonymous, is that okay? But don't assume that keeping the story anonymous is going to feel okay. I've had stories that came up from within the coven that I've heard echoed back to me by people who like left the coven and participated with another coven, and then like my experience or my sorry, I'm struggling for the word here. My eldest spawn, who was a child at the time but is now an adult, had their experience like shared as a funny story in another coven. And I heard, like, I saw on Facebook where they used quotes from that thing. And I'm like, how did you even know about that? Oh, so and so. And it was so funny. And they just shared the blah, blah, blah. And and I'm just a seething ball of rage over here because it was not theirs to share. It was not theirs to share. So if it doesn't belong to you, you have to ask permission to touch it. It's like the rule kind of for everything. And it's for taking photos, sharing photos, tagging people in photos, talking about other people's experiences that they share in like a debrief, or things that happened to them in the ritual. You gotta get that specific consent. Okay. What other areas are there where we think we need to talk about what the boundaries are like between a teacher and a student in this forum, within this academy, within this tradition? Are there other areas of boundaries that like I didn't talk about um, that you would like to have some clarity on? Let me know. Pop those questions, comments, insights into the feedback in the comments in the Red Thread Academy app, like in the RTA videos section, or you can send them to me via chat if you'd like. And that's all. That's all. So I think that was good. That was a lot. Stopping the screen share now, still recording. So let me know. Yeah, I look forward to like talking with you more about this. I'm really hoping to foster some more communication. We remember that we've got our monthly question and answer on the first Sunday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern US time. And our social chat, which is just kind of like check-in, weather report, hanging out time. It's not necessarily that same question and answer time. It's just like, how you doing? How are things going for you? Including like, how you doing? How are things going for you in your studies? But also like, you want to talk about other areas of witchcraft and magic? We could do that. And that's on the fourth Sunday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern US time. So Um, the links for that are for both of those. There's like recurring Zoom links that are set up. You can access them. There's some announcements about the ones for December, so you can look in there. Our social chat for December is coming up on Christmas Day. So that's on the 25th. I know for some of us that's still a big holiday, and for others of us that is not a big holiday. So, um, your mileage may vary on that. If you'd like to get together and have a little decompression time away from holiday stress at all, I'll be here for it. So that's all. Bye, friends. See you soon.